exactly. No, I love it, man. I love it. Well, I'm really glad to be back here. I've been missing, our conversations. So we have some pretty out there kind of stuff where we can kind of, dive deep. We start on one end of a spectrum and then we end up on a spectrum that we didn't even know was there. So,
Aww. I like getting like sentimental jit. This is my favorite version of you. We always talk about these different versions of each other. And I'm like, I really like, because like you're so techie, man. Like you're really like you and me, we can get into some pretty like fucking highfalutin stuff. Like we could be talking about some pretty out there idea space things. And I'm like, man, but like at the core, I just love jit. I just love like the, how are you doing, man? Hey, dude. Like, I liked how when I actually like sent you like, how are you doing? You sent me like a 2-minute voice note. And I was like, aw, I'm getting a voice note. Like you put more effort into this.
I know. But like, think about this. Like it is strange because some people get a message, and the thing with a message, a written text message, is you never quite get across what you're trying to say unless you're purposely you really don't want that person to know.
Well, what do you mean there? Like I understood the first half of that, not the second half.
So, sometimes you send a text message and you're kind of like, you try your best to describe what's going on when someone says, how are you? Or what's going on. And it never, often depending on the type of person, if they really know you, is really received in the way that you intended it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I could have written that text message mad or busy or happy or so in love or, do you know what I mean? But that context isn't necessarily received in the same way that I meant for it to be received.
Oh, yeah, dude, 100%. Like, I always talk about this. I always tell people, I'm like, the written word is the worst possible form of communication in the universe. It's like, it's terrible. It's like, if you're straight with somebody, it sounds like you're being a fucking dick. Like, straight up. Like, sometimes I'll be like, hey, like, literally, the way I get to neutral conversation tone is I have to be putting smiley faces, exclamation marks. Like, I have to be doing all this additional stuff just so it doesn't sound like I don't like you. Because it's weird. Like, I could be like, yo, Jit, looking forward to our podcast. If I don't do any exclamation mark, it can read like, hey, Jit, looking forward to our pod. Like, it sounds formal. You know what I mean? And then see you at 12. And then like, I'll do this with my mom sometimes. My mom's a terrible texter. And I'll go over for a movie night. I'll be like, hey, Mom, looking forward to seeing you like at, 5 or something. And then she'll be like, what do you want for dinner? I don't know. And I'll be like, yeah, that pasta dish is really good. And she'll be like, okay. And I'm like, are you pissed? Yeah. Are you pissed? Like, you know what I mean? And like, we've talked about it, but it's weird, man. It's like, and then when you think of like authors and books and Stephen King, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, you're like, it's astonishing to me that you can make a book that good with the written word because of how flawed writing is. You know what I mean?
You know what? Spot on. Exactly that. Like, we are so attracted to, these writers that have a way of duplicating what they want in their writing. This is a skill in your mind and your soul, your spirit, and your feelings. It's almost like your feelings are your sound, right? You're like, it's like the speaker, right? It's like, it speaks to you, the feelings, like sound. You're not receiving sound because you're reading the written word, right? Your imagination is the movie, the real, like what's going on and how that is duplicated from that written word in your mind as a picture or a moving picture, right? And because you don't have sound, the feeling of that, what they're conveying, and that being duplicated from paper to you, inside you, and it's duplicated across millions or hundreds of thousands of people in almost the same way, that is well written. That is powerful. Now, if you look at it, so many people, when you write about reality, they'll relate to it from their own experiences. But when you write fiction, it's not the same. They're conveying to you an imaginary situation. that is easier to comprehend because you're not keying into all your issues and all the troubles and all the different things that you're trying to like fill in the gaps of this thing that they're trying to tell you, right? Do you see what I mean? So in that sense, that's huge.
Man.
Yeah.
Go on. Did you want to finish that?
That is so powerful for me. Is I love reading Stephen King or, you know, like a Star Trek novel, right? And the thing is that I have nothing in there or almost nothing in there other than the imagination of me wanting to be captain of a starship, which is a positive thing to relate to. So I literally take verbatim what they're saying on paper and I duplicate that in my imagination and my feelings, right? I'm not relating to it from a sadness point or relating into, oh man, like the guy lost his mother such a horrible way. I mean, I can relate, you know, you can relate to it in a way like I didn't lose my mother's still here, but I lost an aunt that was like a mother, you know, like to me. And, you know, so you kind of, it's very different in that sense. It may not be duplicated exactly as the author intended. Whereas I feel, for me at least, I read some fiction that I can really relate to in the sense of relation. I don't mean that, you know, it's an experience. I mean, I haven't, you know, crossed the stars and, you know, gone to unknown regions and, you know, but I have in my imagination. You know? Yeah,
no, it's an interesting thing. And one thing like, and like, you know, this is good talking to you because of this, because like, you know, you have your own company and you have employees and you're the head and all this stuff. But like one thing I'm actually trying to do in my life is to be less and less formal if I can. Even in my speech, like I'm really thinking about this because like when I think about Stephen King, he's one of my favorite authors. I'm reading Under the Dome right now and I'm loving it. Great book. And did you say you have read it or you haven't?
Haven't yet, no.
Really good. But one thing I noticed about Stephen King is a lot of authors, when I read them, they're trying too hard to be professional. Their language is very stilted. It's very like, and then Johnny went to the bathroom and he took out his gun and then he shot his gun and hit like, and I like, you know, that's the normal. You know what I mean? Like, so it's not like it's bad, but you read Stephen King and I was like, what makes Stephen King so fucking good? Because there's something about Stephen King that there's like this barrier with most books with me. And it's like, you know, it can hit me, but it's going through this barrier. Stephen King, there's no barrier. He just, whatever he says, I fully receive it. And I'm like, what is that? And what I've realized is he is so colloquial. Every time he describes somebody, an action, an event, it's like what you would say to me. You're like, yo, bro, this fucking dome like crushed this town the other day. Like he talks like your friend speaking to you about what's going on. His dialogue, incredibly informal. Like even the formal people in his books speak informally. It's like he'll speak about an army commander and the army commander will use slang. He'll say the wrong thing. Everybody is human. Everybody is flawed. And I'm like, why is this so unique? Like, why can't other artists get this down? It's like New York Times best-selling authors can't even get this straight. It's like there's this pretense to everybody. Like most books, there's just this pretense. But with Stephen King, there's no pretense. It's just like he's so informal. And I've been thinking about this in my own life because you know, I'm getting more, business. I'm having more professional people on the podcast. I'm speaking to more people that have done things in the world. And it annoys me sometimes because I feel like I have to play at this part, like, dear so-and-so, I'm inviting you to the Anton Czachor podcast. And then when they respond, they're like, oh, I would love to come on your podcast, Anton. I really liked your podcast with so-and-so. And then it gets into this, sounds great, Ginny. I will see you at 12 p.m. Eastern. Like, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, it's this weird thing. I feel like we've all kind of bought into this like formality thing. It's like, oh, it's good manners to be formal when you meet someone. You can't go like, hey, bro, or hey, brother, or hey, like, sometimes I just want to be like, hey, dude, I love your like, I'd want to be like, hey, Ed Sheeran, yo, dude, love your music, man. I'd love to have you on my podcast. And I want my podcast to speak for itself. I want you to listen to my podcast, be like, okay, this guy is literally just informal. Like, I don't like formality, because I think in some sense, formality literally is the reason, in one sense, not the whole reason, but I think it's one reason why we have so much depression, anxiety, why our relationships fucking suck, a lot of us, because it's like, okay, most of your life is spent working for a corporation, trying to be formal. And then you wonder why your relationships are intimate and vulnerable. You're like, why can't I connect with people? It's like, maybe because literally 70% of your fucking life you're spending acting, trying to find a way to make someone like you and react to you in a certain way. Like, what would happen if we just threw all that out the window? And like, I get it. There's a certain element of formality you need as a CEO to speak clearly, concisely, in a way that, okay, informality works if you already kind of know who the person is. Like, if I listen to Ed Sheeran, I know the way he talks, and I already know I'd vibe with him, then I can be like, hey, brother, I'd love to have you on the podcast. And, you know, if he was down to earth, he'd be like, hey, dude, yeah, for sure. But it's like, if you have a company of 1,000 people, you know, you don't know who you're speaking to. I think, you know, I'm almost answering my question right here. It's like, you know, when you know your audience, you can be yourself, because, you know, look, we're creating a one-to-one partnership relationship, and I want to start that relationship on the grounds of we can be real with each other. But if I need to speak to 1,000 people, and I'm not going to pretend like I want to have an intimate relationship with 1,000 people, maybe that's where formality comes in. What's your thought on the balance between formality and informality?
Interesting. We have this right now. We've kind of like been discussing this. It is literally a balance, but without the conscious thought of trying to balance both. You see, it's not formality or informality, but it's your naturality. Being naturally formal or being naturally informal. It's the balance of both. I can go into a meeting, and when I talk about, you know, the My Grandmother project, you know, we have a remote home care solution called Sensora. Okay? And my business partner, who's like 27, incredible guy, will walk in and he'll be very formal, stating the facts, say, good day, sir, how are you? Mr. Anton, you know, that kind of thing, you know, like that. But I also feel that you automatically, when you're too formal or you're not careful, you're putting yourself under other people. Like,
interesting.
You know, you're like, you know, below their eye level, right? What I'm looking for is to meet me on my eye level, but I can only give you with absolute certainty who I am. Now, you made a really good point earlier about you're connecting with people, right? On whatever level they're on, you want to connect with them and all those different people. I get that completely, and for years I've been like looking at different ways of connecting with mass audiences. Okay, now you've got different types of mass audiences. In your case, you're digitally connecting with people and getting them to relate. You can't see them, but they can see you. That's one form. But think of the other form where you're addressing a mass audience. How do you connect with a mass audience? Well, think about this. And again, I refer to the My Grandmother thing only because so you can understand what I used. If you say to people, hey guys, I run a remote home care, a company that created a remote home care solution for the elderly, they're going to be like this. You know, they don't know what it is yet or how they can relate. Because look, hey guys, let me ask a simple question. Do you have someone or know someone that you wish you could take better care of? You know, knowing that you're so busy and you wish you could be there more often for them? Just show me a raise of hands. You know, everyone puts their hand up. Everyone has someone or someone they know that wants to take better care of someone they know. So you relate to them on a plane that now you start them on a foundation of relation. Okay, it's like this. You know, forex trading or investments. You know, would you like to know where to put your money so you could work better for you? Like, who would say no to that? Like there might be some, but just the knowledge, just the information. It's not going to cost anything. Knowledge is, information, and it helps you with direction and all of that. So I think if you can relate to people on a level, at least start them on the journey where they're all on the same page. Start there. And Stephen King and all these other writers do this. They relate to you on a, I feel good. I mean, I'm on that train right now with him, I started in the correct carriage, that kind of thing, that how do you feel when you board a train and you're looking for a seat? Now, everyone can relate to that part until the point of which seat shall I sit on? Near the window, do I really want to sit next to someone? Or do I always make sure there's a gap between me and the next person because that's how everyone else is laid out, And then you go into the thought process on what you think about that. So it's that, when you're addressing an audience, it's that relation level, I feel. And with me, I tried many years to impress different individuals and things like that in an audience. But I realized that the larger and larger my audience became, I had to kind of find that kind of casual, but not too casual, layer of me. And we spoke about layers of a cake before, right? I had to find that layer of me that it doesn't matter if he is, addressing a friend, a family member, or professionally, I can be that same person, right? It doesn't mean that my close friend Anton, I'm not going to shoot the shit with and talk crap sometimes and have a laugh, right? But when Anton and I go out, to a bar and we meet some new people, Anton can relate to the guy I'm presenting to those people. And he says, oh, that's Jit. That's the way he is always. He's not pretending to be someone else. And then that person is getting a real, feeling of who I am. So does that make sense? Kind of, I know, bounce around a bit.
Yeah. No, that does. And I just kind of had an epiphany when you were speaking there. I had set up this false dichotomy, which you spotted with informal and informal. And you were absolutely correct to actually call it. It's not informal and formal. It's just, are you natural or unnatural? And because what I was thinking about that when you were speaking about that was like talking to the audience or talking to different people is we actually have no base state. We're a different person with everybody. Like when I'm with you, I'm very different than when I'm with my mom or when I'm with my dad or when I'm with my friend Christian or when I'm with my friend Kyle. With Kyle, I'm a goofball. With Christian, I'm a really analytical, psychological. And so it's not like I'm informal or formal, like, because technically speaking on paper, you might say I'm more informal with Kyle and more formal with Christian because Christian, we're more in our heads, we're more processing ideas. With Kyle, we're shooting the shit, joking about South Park and all this stupid stuff. And so, yeah, it's not informal and formal. It's just like you have a specific way with everybody. Everybody brings out, again, that kind of layer cake thing we talked about before. Everyone brings out a different part of ourselves. And so, that's is just like, yeah, like you said, the whole thing is actually, can you be yourself all the time? And yourself has 50 different facets. So it's like, know your audience, know who you're speaking to. If you're speaking to a group of investment bankers or something, they're probably a certain way. They're probably in their head a lot. They're probably they're very analytical, likely. And they might have a creative side, but when they're there, they're not expressing that, or that's not really turned on. They've primed themselves subconsciously to receive information of a certain analytical type and of a certain thing. And so, and that's what's funny is that, it is like, you are slightly different. And that's also, in my example of like when I'm talking and relating to people, trying to invite podcast guests on, like, yeah, who's your audience? If you've listened to a podcast, like, do you know what Ed Sheeran is like? Is he a really laid back dude who doesn't like a lot of like formality? And for someone like that, you can probably take, you might be a bit more formal at first, just because again, people read in between the lines. And the whole thing is too, and I think the one problem or the one potential issue with informality or being really natural is if other people have a preconceived notion in their head of what that means, they'll project that onto you. So for me, if someone's natural with me, I'm like, that's the biggest compliment. It's like, oh, you're comfortable with me. Like, oh, you want to get to know me. We can be vulnerable. We can get intimate really quickly. We can just be ourselves. Other people, if I'm like natural with them, they're like, oh, he doesn't respect me. Because if he respected me, he would be proper. I was raised in a, as a joke, like a British household or something. And we don't speak about emotions. And so that's the funny thing. And maybe that's actually the reason, and that's likely a big reason why people are formal, is that you can't really piss anybody off that way. It's like if you try to go natural, you might piss off 30% of the population that has been indoctrinated from the perspective of like, oh, respect is a firm handshake, a how do you do, sir, that kind of thing. So it's almost to get to the world that we want to get to, we first have to almost break down all the layers of preconceived notions that we've taught each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is interesting. It's interesting. And funny enough, I've been trying to not overanalyze what it is that sometimes I do myself. But I was walking down the street. My business partner comes from Canada. This will make sense. My business partner comes from Canada, and he moves here. And we had really interesting few days, right? So I walk down the road, and this doesn't consciously compute with me, right? But I'm walking down the road, and you got a neighbor says, "Hey Jay, how you doing?" He goes, "You all right?" He goes, "Who's that with you?" Is it your brother, your cousin? Just because he's brown, I don't know. He goes, no. But my response would be, no. You would think I'd say, no. This is Jordan, my business partner. He goes, no, just some other random brown dude walking with me. I'll be messing around because they get my humor, right? I'm not being racist. I'm being like, hey, we're past the whole racism phase in the art community. There are people that are like that, but they know my humor. They know what I'm saying, right? And they'll be like, oh, that's funny. Well, look, man, hope you have a good time. Enjoy calling you with the right man, like that kind of thing. And then, walk down, and like the pastor at church is like, just like watering his garden, his, plants outside the church. And he's like, "Oh, Jitan, how you doing? Bless you. Who's this young gentleman with you?" Like that. And there I'll be like, "Oh no, this is Jordan, Pastor John. He's my business partner from Canada. Pastor John's a great community leader, and, Easter was brilliant. Do you know what I mean? Like that." And he goes, "Oh, be blessed. You're always so kind." But then I'll walk past the mosque, and the leader there will say, "Oh, Jitan, who's this gentleman with you?" And I'm like, "Oh, he's a very good friend of mine and business partner. We're just like walking around town." And my business partner, I'm not registering, right? My business partner's going, "Whoa, this is cool."
I'm five different people in the span of an hour.
Yeah, in the span of like 20 minutes. Right? Like we're walking along, and these Canada and the US, all your stuff is so spread. And he said this to me, right? He goes, "We're so spread out, like even our restaurants from each other, that the restaurants don't relate to each other, or the community of bars and restaurants, but we're so close that we know the convenience store guy knows Pastor John at the church, and Pastor John knows the pub that's on the corner of his church, like just, down the road, and all the guys there. And, do you know what I mean? The Indian supermarket's just across the road on the other corner of the church, and these guys, we're so close, everyone knows each other, and they're within a close enough span where you're in each other's space. So you communicate, or you really just ignore each other. And we don't ignore each other, right? So he was saying that the Canadians are polite, but we don't have this thing where let's say you're in a restaurant or a pub, you don't really cross-pollinate with other groups.
No,
whereas I do, right? Like if there's a guy in the group over there and someone meets me and goes, "Hey man, how you doing? You all right?" Like I've never met them before. And Jordan's like, "Yo, we don't do that. We just kind of stick." And he's like enjoying me in different groups, He goes, "How'd you know these guys?" I go, "No, I just met them.
Yeah.
That's normal for us. So it's being naturally formal and naturally informal. Naturally formal sometimes comes across when you meet someone like who's a community leader or an elder or someone's older, right? Like say in their 70s or 80s, and I'll be like, hey sir, how you doing? You having a good day? You know, I'll be like that. Whereas I'll meet someone else who's like in their 20s, I'm like, hey bro, having a good time? You know, do you know what I mean? Like, that's it. You know, so finding that naturality in each other and being ourselves. But I didn't realize how powerful it was. And I don't want to overanalyze myself and kind of break it down and suddenly go like, oh, I've just messed it up, you know?
Yeah.
But listening to Jordan, and I've been going to Canada for 20 years now, exactly 20 years, right? Constantly. Like I'm talking about going there about 7-8 times a year before COVID, right? So I know the Canadian communities, but I didn't realize that I'm a Brit who still behaves as a Brit in Canada, who's kind of forgiven because I'm not Canadian for doing what I do. And I'm still doing what I do and bring community. My sensei said, you're like gravity and you bring the dojo together. No, I'm just Brit. I'm just Jit from England who's behaving like Jit in Britain, no different, in Canada. And they see it as special. And it's brought people together because I'm still getting the same results.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing these boundaries that Jordan and other Canadians are seeing. And I had a really great conversation with him about this. You know, that when he turns up to a meeting, he might be really formal. And initially I thought, no, because he's a young dude, like 27, in his 20s, you know, he just hasn't learned to be natural yet. It's not the case. People are like that constantly, and I don't want to generalize that, but like the ones I've met, a lot of other people that he's spoke to me about, that they're like that all the way into their 50s.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Whereas me, I didn't know that because even though I think I know Canadians, but really no, I know Jit who interacts with Canadians. I don't know Jit as a Canadian. I'm not a Canadian. I haven't had that upbringing or that interaction or that the understanding those kind of boundaries or social boundaries that people place upon themselves.
Yeah, it's like you don't know what Canadians are like in a vacuum. Yeah. And it's like one thing that's interesting is like, how big is your town, where do you live in England? You don't have to say where, but like how big is it roughly? How many population?
I mean, you know, 7,000 or 8,000 people.
But wow, that's small. Okay.
Yeah. So like, you know, we came here.
Wow.
We were talking about this. We came here when there was like 1,000 people.
Jesus,
so
man.
Everyone knew each other. And those people have become like the biggest, like most famous kebab guy, you know, like the most famous barber. They're all like from that 1,000 from 20, 30 years ago.
Well, that's interesting because like that's what I like about this Under the Dome book by Stephen King, and this is something that maybe that you like so much about Stephen King and that I love so much about Stephen King is he always writes about small towns. He always writes about small communities, and you know he'll throw the dark spark on it, like that it's twisted because of that. Where like, have you seen the movie Hot Fuzz?
Yes.
Great movie, love that movie. But when I was a kid. That was my dream. I wanted to move to England and I wanted to live in a tiny town like an Hot Fuzz where I wanted to move to where you live, where it's just I've always craved community. Like I've always craved just people being open and free with each other. Like that's always been the number one thing for me is like one of my fantasies is like going into a pub and knowing everybody. You know, like I have a little bit of, you know, I don't want to put myself in a box, but I have a little bit of social anxiety. You wouldn't really know it when you speak to me. But it's because I was always like the outcast in high school and I was always the outsider. So I always come into group, like if it's one-on-one, I'm good. The moment it's a group scenario, I feel like, okay, I'm the outsider. I'm on the outside. My first impression, they probably won't like me. I'll probably be too eccentric, too different. And that's because I was like in high school. But it's like simultaneously, the thing I crave most is just groups of people who love each other and kind of respect each other. Like that's just so yeah, just I love that movie Hot Fuzz for that reason. Just like, but before it got fucking twisted, but like at first when it was like when the illusion was held, I was like, I just love that. And maybe that's the reason why, like, as a CEO and as an entrepreneur, you're so natural, is because you were created, you were formed in a culture that was very small and close knit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, do you know what? I completely get that as well. Like, I grew up in a predominantly Indian, and not just Indian, African Indian.
Really? Wow.
To hang out with all the Indians from Africa, right? And you can relate to them. Even some of the terms we use for the word curry and things like that was slightly different. So to relate to a pure Indian from India was slightly different because we had an African twist to us.
Interesting.
Right? And I love that, like that we have that, right? My father was an entrepreneur. He's the third youngest of three brothers, but he's got three younger sisters as well. So he was that guy who could like kind of like dick around a bit, but like get away with it. But yet no one had any expectations of him.
Interesting.
The two older brothers, they did, right? But yet my dad was the one who, would basically get large bags of sweets, make them into smaller bags of sweets, and sell them at school. He wasn't interested in school. Like, he would sell them at school and make money. He would go and make betel leaf sweets, where you got like filling in betel leaf and you flip the betel leaf together. And like, they call it pan, right? And like, he'll go sell them at the drive-in cinema with like savory foods from his mother, and his mother started, and his sister started creating these bags of savory foods and sweets. And he would go sell them at the drive-in cinema to the point where after fixing bikes for the rich, he got enough money to buy his own nightclub.
Wow.
And his mom and sisters used to help him cook at the nightclub. And my dad did as well. My dad's a great chef. And he used that to get everyone to England to have a better life.
Wow.
So, the entrepreneur side and the social side, that my dad's not educated. My dad can't even read.
Really?
Right? Can't even read. And he still holds down a job where they all think that he can read, but he can't. He's a genius. He's a master tactician, socialite, but kind. He's a panda, loveliest man you'll ever meet, one of those people.
Yeah.
And I have that side of me, but I also have the calculating, focused, high energy side of my mother.
Oh.
Right? So you bring that in and you've got me. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, dude. I'm the same way with my parents. Like I've been into numerology and astrology, and like, I get into the woo-woo stuff sometimes. And so for a lot of my life, when I was really into that, I denied my parents' impact on me. I said, okay, I was formed, by the cosmos, the universe. That is my real mother and father. And I was designed kind of to be Anton and to do what Anton does in the world. And so I really discounted biology and conditioning because, when you get into astrology, you start to see like, oh, everything is predestined, right? So I had this really big thing of predestiny. And at the same time, what I've learned is you can have predestiny and still have massive biological and conditional forms, because predestiny is really just saying you're going to be formed by your parents. It's not saying like, your parents are going to do nothing. It's like, here's the blueprint of how you might end up. And it's including all of the stuff within the duality of how you grew up. So now I'm like, yeah, from that context, I was brought up in a household with a eccentric father, a very creative father, very charismatic. Like talk about tactician or charisma. I think my father might be one of the most charismatic people I've ever known in my life, including celebrities. My dad is just ridiculously charismatic, like me on steroids. You know what I mean? If you think I'm charismatic, like he's just me on steroids. Yeah. But then my mom is introspective, psychological, philosophical, spiritual, like warm. Like my dad's warm too, but he's like energetically warm. You know what I mean? He's like, blah, blah, blah. Where my mom is like, she like lock into you one-on-one. She's like, who are you? I want to get to know you. My dad doesn't really care about that one-on-one stuff. He likes groups. And so when you put them together, like in a weird way, man, you really get me. Like when you put both of them together, you get someone who's, charismatic, creative like me, but then like deeply introspective like my mom. Like when you know me one-on-one, I'm my mom. When you know me as the creator of Arc Vision, or at this point, Anton, Czachor, because I changed my names around. But yeah, like when you get to know me on that level, you'd be like, oh yeah, your dad. You know what I mean? That's kind of that point. And it's just this really weird thing where it's like, yeah, I kind of, and because I had such a terrible relationship with my dad growing up, for a lot of my life, I was extremely over identifying with my mother's side of myself. I was like, yeah, I don't like all of the extreme masculine, charisma. Oh, that's fake. You know what I mean? People rely on charisma to manipulate others, cheat others, and all the stuff that made me think of my father. But it's like, especially I think with this company, I think because I just divorced myself from that side of myself. And this company forced me to find all of that within myself, but no longer seeing it from him and be like, no, this is me. And then it was only like 2 years into this that I look at all of these attributes that have cultivated over the last 2 years and go, oh shit, that's actually a lot of what I pretended I didn't have in me from my dad. Like, it is kind of a weird thing when you think of who we are. Cause like, we are our parents to a degree, but we're also more like, we are that kind of woo-woo spiritual side. We are this cosmic design. We are, these different kind of like, yeah, someone was like, oh yeah, like let's say your dad, before like right when you were born, he went to a numerologist, an astrologer, and he's like, who's Jit gonna be? If you read those outlines, you'd probably be like, man, that's fairly accurate. They kind of were bang on about kind of my business side, my entrepreneurial side, what I'm like in relationships. And yeah, I just find it interesting. Yeah. What do you think about that whole, like the balance of who you are in relation to the universe, the cosmos, spiritual, and then your parents and everything?
Well, I mean, I find that really interesting. For me, I'm going to describe it in a funny, but you'll understand it, I'm sure. Okay, so you have an egg, right? Was let's say a fertilized egg. Okay. Now there's different ways you can cook an egg, right? Poached, boiled, fried, you name it. But that egg and the parents that created that are the same people. Like me and my brother, we were born from the same people, right? Same parents. But the experience of the energy of, the life, the decisions, the amount of heat that was put on him versus myself, and just still using the analogy of an egg, was very different. I would be like, a poached egg kind of thing, or do you know what I mean? Like, whereas he went hard boiled, that kind of thing. So for me, the whole kind of cosmic side of it, which is so much bigger, is where is this egg that you are, whichever way you are cooked up, what kind of dish is it going to end up in, And is it gourmet, or is it high street food, or is it, it really is about those decisions and associations along the way, right? Those ones that you decide to keep and those ones that you decide to let go is down to the forces of nature as well. You can't always help some disasters and lucky wins either, So we are all infinitely different from each other. We really are, because there's no way I can create perfectly, even using an algorithm, Anton, because all his experiences and all the things that from being that egg to being in that dish, the gourmet dish that he is today, right? That everyone's craving for. There's no way I could work out the exact journey and kind of, in theory, theoretically, it is possible. If Anton literally was honest with me and himself about every single decision and journey, you know. But then there's that whole, we have privacy, right? Of there's only a certain, we're not going to sit here, both of us naked. Let's just say that, right? There's a privacy thing of the things that we think about and do, or not nothing like unethical, but what I mean is like just those thoughts that you have, those different things you do, those weak moments that you had, or those strong moments that you had that you actually don't really want to share, you know, that you're proud of yourself or you don't really want to share, that made you. And we're in denial of those things as well.
Yeah.
We don't really want to talk about them, right? So you can't, to duplicate you, honestly, empathetically and correctly, is almost impossible because of those things we're hiding from those own notions. So the formula, the methodology, the recipe that created you is almost, in theory possible, but in reality, almost impossible to recreate. So the beauty of it is that you have these beautiful pieces of artwork, like yourself, like me, like my family, like my brother, you know, all these lovely people like my grandmother. And you got some like disaster stories as well. There still are, you know, all the decisions, all the thoughts, all the things that happened to you, you arrived in this exact place. You have no idea that egg that went through hell trying to cross countries and boundaries to get to that dish, or was it just from across the road? Do you know what I mean? Even that stage of creation, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Sorry, I'm using it.
No, for sure. And like, and it even goes deeper too, man, because not only was like, are we that egg starting at our mother, we're also all their ancestors, all the epigenetic stuff that's in their DNA. We're also our great-great-grandfather who survived, or not great-great-great, but our grandfather who, like my grandfather survived Auschwitz. And he went back and forth 3 times to get people out, right? And then he immigrated to Canada. So it's like right there, it's like, okay, I also have these like genetic tickers from my grandfather. You know what I mean? I have certain anxieties, fears. I have certain propensities that came from my grandfather and then my grandfather's grandfather. So it's like, if you actually were to like clone somebody or recreate Jit or Anton, you'd literally have to go to like the genesis. Like you'd literally have to go to the first bacterium, because literally that turns into an amphibian, that turns into a monkey. And then that, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like literally the weird, crazy thing is our DNA. Like, if you really want to get crazy, like we're all related, technically. Like I'm actually related to thousands and thousands and thousands of years back, because how many original Homo sapiens were there? Right? Exactly. It's like, and then before Homo sapiens, monkeys. So it's like so it's crazy. It's like, yeah, you know, for the most part, we're kind of our parents, and then we have a bit of our grandparents. We have a bit of, you know, it gets less of an impact as it gets more externalized. But like, if you really want to be like legit about it, for someone to like completely recreate you, they would almost have to like recreate the entire universe, like starting with the Big Bang. You know what I mean? They'd have to like re-simulate the cosmic dust that like created the planets. And it gets so trippy, but it's kind of freeing in some sense. It makes you like less obsessed with the small shit in your life. Like, you know what I mean? Sometimes you can like buy a fucking 2 of the same magic cards and be like, shit, I bought 2 magic cards for like $1 or something. And you can over exaggerate that. I actually had that happen this morning on a walk. I was like, fuck, I bought that card twice. And then I was like, Anton, does this really matter? Like, that's like $1. And I'm like, oh shit, you're right. But it's weird the way our brains work. It's like we over exaggerate the smallest things. You know what I mean?
We do. It is crazy. Like, the power of really, I feel the power of really realizing your own power and your own ability is getting to a point where you can relax naturally in your own skin and really just take it all in. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know what I mean.
Just taking it all in. I'm standing there. The day for yesterday, I took Jordan to because I was captain of the pool team. We're all standing there, and he's like, "How are you seeing all these positions and things?" and still talking to everyone at the same time and like connecting, knowing who's just walked in, who's just walked out, who put the last pound down, because we put the pounds down so we know who plays playing order. I know all the names of the people. You know, like, how do you like keep like, you know, this expansive view and, you know, understanding that? He goes, I just am. I'm not trying. I'm not trying to play Paul. I'm playing Paul. I'm not trying to socialize. I'm socializing. I'm not doing any of those things either, because ultimately I'm just being, you know. And to receive, to be willing to receive is just not even thinking about the word I'm willing to receive, but just to literally be without any kind of expectation or connotations on that. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that's where we will not get pissed off or confused or upset that we don't understand when whether it's the Big Bang or something else, and which atoms collided into which atom and how to recreate that as well, and you know, understand how fast it was expanding at that point, and you know, what was the color of the atom, what kind of, how many electrons did it have, you know, do you know what I mean? How much mass did it have? You don't have to think about that. Like literally, like it's okay, you know.
I feel like, you know, that's something I think I'm learning right now is like, what really matters? Like, yeah, it's really fascinating to learn about science and philosophy and all this stuff. But it's like that in some sense, there's almost like diminishing returns. It's like when you first learn about it, it adds something to your life. But as you continue down the train, it starts to actually almost siphon stuff from your life after a certain point. It's like learning about something that's fascinating adds, deepens your understanding of yourself. And then it starts to like take away from yourself. It almost starts to like pull you into itself. Rather than you taking it and putting it into your life, you're almost losing yourself to its information. And it's like when that happens, I just like, I don't know, man. Sometimes when I watch movies too, like I watch like a romantic comedy. Like I just saw the movie Spanglish with Adam Sandler. Have you ever seen that movie?
I haven't seen it. No, I haven't seen it.
Great movie. My God. It's a touching movie, man. Like Adam Sandler is like one of my favorite actors now. Yeah. He's remarkable. He's so warm. Like 50 First Dates is like probably in my top 5 favorite movies of all. Like I'm a chick. I'm totally a chick. Like I love that movie. And it's like I really love watching like romantic comedies because like they make you laugh and they make you feel something if they're done well. And it's in that, like I finished the Spanglish movie. I went over to my mom's place last weekend because, you know, we do weekly movie nights. Well, weekly movie nights. And we watched that movie. And I remember like after the end, it's one of her favorite movies. And she's like, oh, what do you think of it? And I was like, that was really good. And then we were talking about some of the things because we sometimes talk about these movies after, because again, we're introspective people and we share and we go like, I related to Adam and I felt that. And like an hour passed and then I was like, you know what? I really like that movie. Like it was like, I like it more now than I did when it was over. It's like, it kind of grew on me in my heart. And it put me in this like really beautiful headspace where like, I'm like, man, like I love John Wick, but John Wick doesn't make me feel like that after it's over. Like it doesn't like make me feel like more connected to humanity and human beings. And I'm like, and it's in movies like that. And like, I love all this shit. I love fantasy and sci-fi and Stephen King and John Wick and everything. I love it, man. But it's like, man, when I just watch something that like, you know, makes me like just feel like it's so much more grounding. And like, and one thing is I had a difficult moment this week. One of my old traumas, insecurities from childhood came up, and like literally, man, I was like shedding a few tears because it was painful. And you can relate to that. Like certain things that just you have, for some reason, man, you still haven't that one thing. It makes you feel like a child you don't understand anything. And like, I was just, yeah, man, I was in that place and I couldn't like even function, man. Like it just, I was kind of in that emotional space. And it was right there that I just realized, I was like, God, it's like I was feeling like a lot of shame because I'm like, as a male, as an adult, as a masculine person, I should be over this. I shouldn't be feeling this. I was like beating myself up over it. And I was like, dude, this is like a symptom of our world, is that like we've been all raised in a way that like when we go through traumas, not only do we go through traumas and we don't know how to be there for ourselves, but other people like dogpile on. Other people shame you. Oh, get over it. Pick yourself up. And like, I love some Jordan Peterson stuff. Like, I think he's a good guy. I like him a lot. But I'm like, sometimes I'm like, man, I think sometimes you just need like that nurturing energy too. Sometimes for yourself and other people, you need to be like, hey, it's okay. Like, believe me, it's enough that you're feeling it. That's enough of a disciplinary action. That's enough of a punishment, is your own having to go through it, right? And sometimes I'm just like, man, and it just goes back to the Spanglish movie. I'm like, man, I just think like, man, we just need like to be kinder to each other and like connect with each other more. You know what I mean? Like really, and like, yeah, so a lot of time me and you will have these really deep, big conversations, even like this podcast. But like sometimes like the thing I love most about you is like when I just like check in on you. I'm just like, hey man, like how's it going? And then like, we share that kind of real, honest, heartfelt moment just for a bit. We vibe, and then we share that moment, and then we move on. I just feel like that stuff, the small stuff, is more important than we think,
Small stuff's really the bigger stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, it really is more important, than the bigger stuff sometimes. And I get you, man. Like, I love our relationship. And, even those one moments, it might be like the exchange is only 4 messages or something, like, but it means so much more than that conversation you had like with like 20 messages with someone, because you mean what you say, and I say what I mean, like in return, and that is so, so powerful. And I think that to have that, even when you're like, you know what, like I just had a bad moment. Sometimes I might message you and I've had like just a bad moment and I'm not talking to you about that moment, but I'm like just saying, hey man, I just want to reach out to someone who actually gives a shit about it. Like, do you know what I mean? Just a moment. That's all I want. I've done that part. And when you respond, I'm like, oh yeah, just to know that person, that cool guy is in my life. Because I don't want to talk to anyone else around here about, I don't even want to talk about it. It's not even that.
Yeah.
You just need someone to go, hey man, I love you too. Like
you just want someone to see you.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're not pretending to be something. I mean, I have like some bad days as well on many different things, you might be that like, someone who I thought was on side had a bad day and they were supposed to do a meeting for me and they ended up not conveying the message I asked them to convey. For example, right? I could just be like, hey, Tony, do you mind giving this to John? And then he's had an upsetting day and Tony's usually cool and he goes to see John and he ended up upsetting John about something because he was having a bad day. But all I asked him was to take this piece of paper and give it. That's it. That's all I want. The message was delivered, but with too much other stuff. And you were talking about, and I like to relate back to what you're saying, what matters, really, okay? Now, if you look at the word matters, the word matter in that, right? Matter has mass. The more attention you give something, a particular subject, the more mass it creates. And when something has significant mass, eventually, guess what forms? Gravity. We spoke about gravity in our personalities and things. And when you give something enough attention and enough matter, and it matters enough, it gains enough mass that it increases in mass so much, even if it could be a good thing or a bad thing, or it could be your love for someone, that actually has this gravity that you've suddenly made yourself small maybe in its presence and that it's still pulling you in. It's still got you. You can't get away from its gravitational pull. You might not want to get away from it, right? It might be an unhealthy relationship that you've given so much into because it matters. It matters. And you gave it more and more mass. And now it's got this, it's become so big and significant in your life that it has so much mass that it has this gravity that just pulls you in. And that's just a certain way. I literally thought about that. I've never thought about that before. I thought about that while you were speaking. I was like, mass, gravity. We spoke about gravity. You know? And I walk into a room and people are drawn to me. That's because I matter to them. They gave me mass. I didn't give me mass. I'm cool. I could be a fly on the wall. I'll just carry on doing my thing, you know. But I suddenly matter to them. They suddenly give me mass. I've got these two friends that I see at the pub sometimes, you know. And we have a pub culture here. You know, we don't have an alcoholic culture in that sense.
I love it. I love that.
Yeah, it's like, you know, hot fuzz, right? Hot fuzz.
Yeah, exactly.
Get a pint, you have a conversation. You might end up calling a friend, I don't know, a dickhead from across the room, but what you mean is, man, I love you and I'm thinking about it, right? But that's how you convey because you're lads. You know, it's stuff like that. And you're just sitting at that bar, you're talking to all the waiters, waitress, you're talking to everyone, right? Like everyone's your friend, you know? I have a situation where sometimes someone goes, I put a pound down on the pool table, it was my turn. And I went, well, number one, I know that you didn't put a pound down. Number two, I know there's a camera up there. Number three, I'm the captain of the pool team. Number four, I know everyone in this bar and they're saying that you didn't. Should we check the cameras just so I can respect you? And, you know, should we have a go look? And he goes, nah, forget it. You know, because he knew, right? But it's like that, you know, like people get so focused on their own thing, they get frustrated. You know, that I was there next, but they didn't realize that the routine of the community was you must put a pound down before you play pool and in order as well. So you know when you're going next, right? If you walk away, we're not going to come find you, right? But they might be like, well, yeah, but you came and got Chris. And I'm like, yeah, because Chris is my friend and he's put in time with me and I know him. So I knew it was his go next. And I went to see him before the last game ended. So he was here on time. So he wouldn't disrupt the flow of people playing. So many people, you know, things like that. People go, wow, I love that. Like, I know when Jit's there, I'm good. Like if he's, you know, because he's a good friend of mine. But the new guy's walked in, is being rude. You know, he's got principle that matters to him. And he's stuck on it. He's stuck in this being rude or being hurt thing because he gave so many other things that matter and mass in his life that he's like pissed off that thing is like still got a hold on him. And now he's like conveying those emotions to a public pool table. You know, I mean, like, I'm going like expansive now, right? Like, you know.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. And it's like, yeah, the stuff that matters is inherently blinding. Because it gets so big that it takes over your life. Like I'm aware of this in my life so much, man. I go through phases. I might go through a video game phase, a music phase, a podcast phase, a Magic the Gathering phase, a book phase. I'm friends with Christian for this 2 months. Like we're best buddies. Then I'll go through a JIT phase. And it's crazy because it's almost like I live different lives. It's like whatever you give enough mass till it creates gravity, literally like there's times where I'll make something in my life. Like none of this stuff matters inherently. We make it matter. I make YouTube matter. It's like at the end of the day, all it is me making videos and me having a source of income. But it's like I've literally given it all this meaning. I've put all this attention, this energy, this focus into it. I've built it up till it's a black hole of gravity. And my life is like, I wake up and the first thing in my head is like my company. And it's like, and a lot of people are like, oh, that's obvious. But it's like, well, not really, because it like that, you can change those things. Like I could just walk away from my business tomorrow, take all my attention away from it. And from then on, my life, that is no longer an aspect of my life. But 5 seconds before making that decision, my life revolved around that. Then you ask yourself the question, well, what is life then? It's like if all life is what you make matter. And then that ends up having a gravitational force. Like, believe me, there's been times in my life, man, where I've made Magic the Gathering what my life is about because I would go on a bender of 2 months and I'm researching cards, researching decks, spending money on this shit. I'm thinking of like boys' nights and playing Magic and playing Commander. It's like, man, there's been times where that has taken precedence over my own job, my own corporation that I've been building. And it's like, it's not bad or good. It's just looking at an example of how we can literally define, like we can make our lives about certain things. And like, well, think about a relationship. It's like, let's say you're dating someone for 4 years, or you're married to someone for 20 years. You've given that so much energy, so much gravitational force, where your life is my wife. I go home every night, kiss her on the cheek. Hey, baby, how's your day? Hey, babe, how's your day? We have our anniversary. We go on a date night every Thursday. Like, we have kids together. Like, it's like, yeah, those things are meaningful. They matter. They're real. But it's like, what makes them actually real and what actually makes them matter is the mind, is the attention, is the consciousness that we place on them. Because let's say you were given amnesia, right? And you were given amnesia when you were on a hunting trip or something, and you don't even realize, and you don't have your phone or anything. If someone gave you amnesia, or you just had amnesia in that moment, and you didn't have a way to get back to your life, it's like that life is gone. Like your new life is in the present moment. Okay, now I'm in the forest. I'm surviving. Like I could be in the African savannah, and there's lions around me. Your life is now 100% about that African savannah. Your kids, your wife don't exist anymore. For all that matters, you could literally spend the next 30 years of your life. Your wife, kids think that you died on a hunting trip in the African savannah, but you literally lived another life for 30 years. It's like that's actually fucking bonkers when you think about it. That life is literally what we focus on. We can literally impregnate things into our lives. We can, 1 second, I don't know what Magic Gathering is. Second set, I've blown $1,000 on and I've built 20 decks and I go Friday Night Magic every night. It's like, you can create like different mini lives within your life. You know what I mean? Absolutely.
It was interesting to say that. My grandmother is experiencing dementia. And so it was really, I had a really interesting conversation with her. She still remembers me and all of that, and because I'm one of her primary carers. And she had this really interesting thought while we were just sitting there. It was like her hand in my hand, like we're just sitting on her chair, like chilling. But we're chilling. I don't want to be anywhere else. You see, the thing is that I've learned this thing that I don't know if I ever want to change it. What I know works for me is I'm very present with whoever I'm with. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to be doing next, Anton, or what I did half an hour ago or before we started this podcast, right? I'm thinking about this conversation. I'm here. It's my adventure, it's my journey. I'm like really enjoying it. Oh, and this is cool. We're talking about matter and creating matter, creating mass. I'm thinking I'm in the starship, that this thing's creating this problem I'm creating that's got mass, and I'm being pulled in by its gravitational pull right now, and I'm on an adventure with you right now, buddy. I'm like, you could be Han Solo, I'm Chewbacca. It's all good, But that's how my brain works. I'm here, right? And I'm exploring. Literally, I'm an explorer. I love Star Trek and all those things, and Magic the Gathering. Hell, I've always told you, Aurelia War Leader was my favorite card. It's not the best card. I just like that there's another attack phase the first time she attacks, and I always used to get her to attack last. Then there was another attack phase. I killed everyone. I loved it. It was one of my favorites, and I know that we relate to each other on that level. I can't wait for that first time where I go, "Hey, man, make sure you have your favorite deck ready because I'm bringing mine." And have your backup deck just in case. Let's just pick 2 or 3 decks and we're going to go out. I don't care where we end up. We're going to play Magic, right? So, but let's just say that we had no expectation, but that we're meeting each other and we're going to play Magic. We don't care where that is. There's more opportunity of us having this incredible creative adventure. Wow. Where we might even end up playing Magic because we don't know where we're going to play. I'm like, Anton has this idea of where we could go. I'm like, look, don't even think about it too much. Think about where we could go potentially, but let's not put it in stone. Let's just go. Wow.
Dude. Go on.
We're together, right? We're together, but we don't know where we're going to go. It's almost like, us, and I say the Han Solo and Chewie thing because us going, hey, buddy, where, you're like, hey, buddy, where should we go? And I'm like, like that way, like, I don't care, right? I just want to go that way. Let's just go, right? But while we're on that ship, we know that we have Magic the Gathering and we have each other. So like, we don't need to be anywhere else. Is what I'm saying, is that ship could stand still as far as we're concerned. But that experience of creating something without actually consciously limiting that experience in any way, other than we've got something to do that we both enjoy.
Dude, want to know what that reminds me of? Have you ever seen those movies with Ethan Hawke, Before Midnight, Before Dawn, Before?
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
Where it's like just like literally the camera just follows them for 3 hours in real time as he meets a girl, and then they end up just going on an adventure for 3 hours or 6 hours or whatever. Like, it reminded me of what you just said. I'm like, there's such a magical feeling to that movie because it's one of the most genius movies because it literally just looks like you're following two people who just met and are just talking about life. Like, hey, want to go to the bookstore? Like, literally, you follow them doing the most random shit. Hey, want to go into that bar and have a pint? And you literally just like follow them into the bar. They literally just start talking with the guy, grab the pint, drink. You literally watch a scene with them for half an hour, just a real-time scene of them talking about life and where they grew up and their dreams. And then they leave the bar and you're just like literally the camera guy. Like, you're just like the camera guy following behind them. And the cool thing about that movie is like they had no plan. And what it's making me think of what you just said is like, man, like I think like that's one thing we do in life is we have too much of a plan. Like, that's like the most romantic date. Like, if I was taking a girl on a date, like whoever next girl I date or something, I want to do something like that. Like, not have any outcome in mind. Just be like, hey, like I'm taking you out. She's like, oh, where are we going? And then I'm like, it's a surprise, but really I don't even know. Like, you know what I mean? Like first thing I know, we're just gonna go to the park first. I don't know what we're gonna do at the park, but we're gonna start at the park. And literally, a relationship is we will together, like a chess match, just okay, I do the next play, you do the next play. Like, that sounds kind of cool too. Is like, what if you almost had a date like a chess game or something, where it's like you literally, it's like, okay, I pick the next thing we do for the next 20 minutes. And then whatever, when my 20 minutes is up, if we're in the middle of something, we go, okay, where are we doing next? Where do you want to go next? You know, it's like that's almost like a podcast, but it's like a life cast. It's like you're literally like in a conversation, it's like you offer an idea, I take the idea, I take the baton, I go crazy territory, I hand it back to you, you go over there. Imagine if like you did that, but rather than the safety of a conversation, like you actually like there was like an instruction, like you actually took actions on the ideas. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that is what's beautiful. Like I make certain people nervous with the way I am because I kind of go, right. You know, they'll say, like, again, I say my business partner, when Jordan comes in, he goes, hey man, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I'm exactly where I want to be, you know? And he goes, you know, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm here with you. I'm like, I'm all yours, buddy. But, you know, he goes, yeah, but let's do something. What do you want to do? You want to go a pint? You want to, you know, he goes, hey man, we can do whatever. I tell you what, do you want to take my lead or should I take your lead? Right? He goes, no, I'll take your lead. And then like the whole time you're walking down the street and he's like, what are we going to do? He goes, I'm already doing what I said. You know, this is what we're doing. We're doing this. You know, and he's like, what? So it's like the romantic part of like when when you see a girlfriend and go on a date. Imagine this. The way I look at it is this. If you're literally with someone, like me and my girlfriend get along so well, we could just put us anywhere and we'll just have something to watch. She loves Star Trek as well. And, you know,
that's awesome.
Yeah. Oh man, she knows. She calls me Jean-Luc. You know, I don't think they ever hooked up in Star Trek, but just, you know. But I say to her that we're on our own starship. When we go somewhere, we're not going somewhere. That place is like, many times you have the earth and people revolve around the earth. I say that the places revolve around us.
Interesting.
We're exactly where we want to be. We end up at the pub. We're the same, but we're in the middle, and it's almost like you go pub, Magic Gathering, the fair, the market. You know, like, you know what I mean? But we're exactly where we want to be. If we are in my house, or we're in my garden, or we're in the pub, we haven't moved. Everything else has moved around us.
Dude, that's crazy. And that's where we're gonna end this. That's a nice finishing thought, man. But dude, literally, man, I had some questions and we didn't get to any of them, which is literally always what happens. You didn't give me anything to work with this time either. You're like, hey man, I'll think of some questions, and then sure enough, I'm like, okay, I need to make the podcast thing now. But go on.
I did to you what I did exactly to Jordan on our walk.
Yeah. Just like go with the flow.
Come up with a subject. I tell you why. Okay, strength and weakness of Jit. Okay, strength, I can be very present. Weakness, I don't really plan anything, but not because I'm unplanned. My adventure is with whoever I'm with on that starship, heading nowhere. It's okay. Heading somewhere usually. You're not heading nowhere. You're heading somewhere, but you just don't know where that somewhere is.
You want the most amount of chaos and adventure to be able to infiltrate whatever you're doing in the moment.
Because what you create out of that will be a beautiful, most beautiful things are temporary, like a blossoming flower in season. And that doesn't have enough mass to hold you there forever. And when you let it go and it floats away, and then you've got another season so you can discover a new flower, a new thing, a new experience. It's when we hold on to these things and we give it so much mass, it holds us in and crunch. Too much mass can crush you, right? You know, do you know what I mean? That kind of thing, because the gravitation is so strong. So, you know, anyway, that we could fly off the handle again on that. But I wanted to just kind of give you that. I kind of like feel like that's kind of a bit of a Mass Effect, you know, conversation.
Yeah, no, I feel that, man. But yeah, this was awesome. But first, is like now it's shameless plug time. So what are you working on? What are you doing right now? And if people want to find you, where can they find you?
Well, I'm currently promoting my work, my inventions. You know, I'm more focused on my inventions now, and being an inventor rather than a director of a company. So I want people to see what I've invented, not from a I want that perspective. So if you ever look up Sensora Health, it's based on a remote home care solution I built for my own grandmother because I love her and I want other people to be able to care for their loved ones. So look up Sensora Health, you know, .co.com, you know, I have all those. So you'll see what I'm working on. You'll also see Oban, which we've spoken about before, which is a home care or hand washing product. But again, just look at it from a perspective of I'm an inventor. I want people to see me as a creator, inventor. And that's what I'm plugging kind of more today than anything is look up. That's how you'll get to know that side of me. You know, Jit, the legit Jit, you know. So, yeah, I have Instagram and things like that, but have a look at that. You know, I'd really like people's thoughts. If they ever post anything on this channel, you know, on your video, I'd really like to know what people think. And if you have any creative people in your space, look me up. I like to invent things.
Yeah, man, that's very cool. And it's funny because that was actually, we might touch on this in the next podcast, but my big theme that I actually wanted this podcast to be about was the cycles of life. Like, you know, going through periods of nothing then extreme change, or even like going through periods of like, you think your life is all about the 4 Excellence Academy. And then one day you wake up and you feel compelled to move in a different direction and go more in this inventor route or be seen as an inventor. It's like we have so many facets of our personalities and our lives. And yeah, I think sometimes we can think our life is going in one direction forever. And then one day we just wake up and you feel called to almost be like a different kind of person. I don't want to get too much into that. We'll do that in another podcast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely understand that. I mean, I love the new business title, you know, because it's you. And in the same fashion, I don't want to be known as For Excellence, Sensora, or any of those things. I want to be known as Jit.
Interesting.
And that's where we can kind of pick that up next time. I think that'd be very powerful. I'm really proud of seeing how you've grown from your company names to where you are now, because it's the most authentic. Like, yeah, like when someone says Anton to me, I'm like, yeah, I'm there, man. I'm like a big fan. So, I think you're incredible in what you do. And I want people to feel the same way about what I do. I don't want them to think this guy's all over the place. No, that these inventions and these different things and for excellence are all facets of myself, but that's not purely me. I want them to know me.
That's interesting. This is the last thing I'll say. This is also just what we do in general. You'll be like, hey, Anton, 5-minute call, 2 hours later. But even this like idea, like I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I'm like, why was I so attached to the name Arc Vision? Like sometimes like we get attached to things years ago and we forget why we committed to them. Like I know you asked me that. You're like, hey man, are you sold on the name Arc Vision? And I was like, of course I am, dude. It's my company name. But it's like now that I've changed it, I'm like, why was I so sold? Like, why didn't I just want to go with my name? And now when I see other people, I sometimes think, I'm like, okay, like, why do people need to choose a name? One thing is obviously if you're going to make the company bigger than yourself. Well, let's say someone is like a solo person and they have a name like myself. I was like, man, what was that? And maybe subconsciously, it was like I could hide behind a company name. There's a level of formality, or that name is a thing. You know what I mean? And Anton, I'm not a thing. I'm just this random person, and I think like I had to go in this direction because I needed to do this for a couple of years, build my confidence up to the point where I could rely on my name as a thing, as an entity. It's like if I started off as Anton Czachor, that doesn't mean anything. But because of everything I've kind of been through in my own journey in life, Anton Czachor is more than just Anton Czachor. It's like Anton Czachor reactions, or like Anton Czachor. Like it's almost like it's become a thing. It's like Tony Robbins or Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is not Joe Rogan. It's Joe Rogan. It's like, it's the thing. It's like, it's a symbol. It's an icon in people's minds. Joe Rogan is not Joe. It's the whole thing. It's the experience. He was kind of genius. I don't even know if he knew this when he called it the Joe Rogan experience, because it's actually become a Joe Rogan experience, not just Joe Rogan. You know what I mean? Quick, last 2 thoughts on that before we finish.
Do you know what? Absolutely. I mean, why give, and this relates to our podcast, why give mass to anything else but yourself? The most important thing in your life, in the center of your universe, is you. And to give yourself the matter and the mass, and make yourself the gravity, you, not other things, not a company title, not a car, not a fancy home or a fancy business name, but you're the powerhouse in this, man. Like, that's how I feel. When you see how straight away I went, yeah, like that was my reaction. But I have so much gravity on you in terms of like you as you, and seeing you as you, and the things that you do and that you love, that you are now investing in the thing that I love most about you. But the thing that you know that you should, and you do, I know, love yourself as well. Like, really respect yourself and say that I am the guy, right? And that is what I think I was so proud of. I felt the gravity, but in a, not a, like this kind of way. I felt like, whoa, yeah. It was that, my automatic reaction was that, if you remember, like that was literally how I felt. Like, okay, maybe you didn't feel that through text, but I was like, whoo, yeah, like you are way ahead of the curve, even compared to me. I'm like looking at Sensora and Oban for excellence, and where's Jit? And now, through the experience of exploring through my friends like you, I'm going, hey man, Jit, yeah. Like, this is me. I want people to know me as me. I don't want people to know me as the Oban guy or the Sensora guy, the For Excellence guy. That's what I want to do. And I'm learning stuff from you, Anton. This is great. Thanks, man. I hope that helped. Was that right?
Wow. Hey, I really appreciate that, dude. That's I felt that. Like when you were speaking there, I was like, oh shit, I feel this, man. Like,
Yeah,
wow.
like, that was like from the heart, buddy. You know, like that for me, when you get that response from me, and you know this already, it's like authentic and genuine. I'm like, haven't pre-planned it. I haven't even really thought it through. You know,
That's the best way, man.
Yeah. So no, there you go, man. I hope that helps. I hope that was the thought that you were looking for, and I hope our your audience really benefit from what we've spoken about today.
Yeah, man. I love you, dude. And one thing I like about you is I feel like you've been like hibernating your entire life. I feel like, man, like there's so much potential in you. And I just like, I love talking to you so much. And like, you know, it's weird, man. I was telling my mom this. I was like, dude, I met Jit like 6 months ago. And I'm like, and I'm like, I consider him like one of my, I don't know, it's beyond words. I'm like, it feels weird calling you like a best friend or like a friend or like, it's like, man, I've never even fucking seen this guy in real life. And it's so bizarre. And like it's just such a weird thing. I'm like, human beings are weird because some people, you know, for 10 years and you just never fully feel like you are understood and you connect with them. Other people like who I'd consider my, like, you know, one of my best friends, Christian, I met him a year and a half ago. And like, literally I would say like, we are no closer now than we were after the first month of knowing each other. But we're no closer. It's like, it was immediate. It was like this immediate pull. And then like with you, it's like, I still remember like that first meeting we had. We won't get into that, but that first meeting we had, like it was so weird. It was like, I think at the end of that first meeting, it was like, hey man, we'll stay in communication. It was just like right off the bat, it was like, yeah, like you saw something in me and I saw something in you. And it was just weird. At that time, I couldn't have predicted where this would go or anything, but it's just interesting how, I don't think it takes long to know somebody. I think it's an energetic, instantaneous transmission of consciousness. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I mean, like it's so powerful and yet undefinable. You know, the beauty, remember what I said, is never define. Those who define love limit it, right? Yeah. And those who just accept it and see it and it grows like a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I'd rather give that love that we have the mass and the gravity because I am drawn into that. I want that. And I want it to keep growing and I want it to keep getting more powerful. But I'm not going to define it. I'm not going to say why. I'm not going to limit it in any shape or fashion. So I love you, man.
Yeah, and again, last thing, this is what I was trying to say with that. But yeah, I feel like you've been hibernating in that I feel like, you've done, like, there's so much to you. And how old are you? 43?
42.
42, you're 42. And it's like up until this point, I'm not saying you've been hiding, but like, you know, you, in some sense, we've been hiding behind company names. We've been hiding behind ideas outside of ourselves. We've been, you know, creating external things, external companies, external things. But it's like, you know, for the first time in your life, you're like kind of taking that, like you said, you're taking all that like in and you're taking everything out here and you're bringing all that in. And it's like, you know, people are like, oh yeah, you need a name for a company if you're going to make something. It's like, well, not if you're like Tony Robbins or like, you know, he sells things and seminars and courses and it's a Tony Robbins experience or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, the name becomes a weird symbol in some sense. But anyway, I freaking love you, Jit. So have yourself a fantastic rest of your day. And yeah, we'll definitely do this again probably in a month or two and we'll stay in touch. Right?
Sounds good, brother. Thanks, man.
And to everyone watching, I love you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.